Throughout time, there has been a mighty war that is waged between Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time, where both fan bases at work would send emails to each other to determine which one was better and which one had the better game design or bosses. Today, we're not talking about that crap. We're going to talk about Twilight Princess versus Ocarina of Time. Twilight Princess is one of the most underrated Zelda games out there. Of course, every time you ask a Zelda fan what's their favorite Zelda, you're always going to hear that it's either Link to the Past or Ocarina of Time. And occasionally you'll get those hardcore Majora's Mask fans and occasionally the Link Awakening fans, but you never really hear people go die hard on Twilight Princess and why it's such a good game. And I think that's a great shame. I think it's one of the better Zeldas, and I think it is even significantly better than Ocarina of Time in many ways. And of course, we're going to go through that. We're going to go through certain main topics that I think makes it excel overall through my opinions and why I think Twilight Princess is a superior Zelda title compared to Ocarina of Time. First off, let's talk about items in Twilight Princess. They were far more unique and they were far more easy to use and had far more uses compared to that of Ocarina of Time. When you would think of the boomerang, you would think, oh, it's just something to stun. But in this, it was something to move things around. You could move a bomb from point A to point B. You could stun enemies. You can bring enemies closer. It had a ton of cool uses, and it even added very fun puzzle mechanics throughout the game. Even the bow, you could combo it with the bomb. You could use it as a more accessible weapon that could one-shot certain enemies. It just felt more of a use in the way that certain enemies were placed, where they were sniping you from their own watchtowers. It just felt more of a use, and you could use it as a strategy, as a way to even as parts in the game where you're stealthily moving around and you didn't want to alert the guards. It just felt far more useful. Like, of course you had that in Gerudo Valley in Ocarina of Time, but this just made a lot more sense and it felt a lot smoother. And especially the ability to use items very easily and handily on Epona throughout this large overworld, where you're able to quickly dispose of enemies or fight enemies while you're riding around, where in Ocarina of Time it felt a lot clunkier and not as smooth. And it just felt kind of weird overall. It just didn't feel that nice. And of course, there's a lot of uniqueness in the game, right? The items, there's the ball and chain and the spinner. And it's something that you didn't really see in a lot of Zelda games overall. It was just very epic to see that these new items were incorporated and how they were used. It was fun to smash enemies with the ball and chain. It was fun to ride along walls in the spinner. And of course, both of these fall under the common Zelda sin of, oh, I only use it mainly for the dungeon that they're in and I don't see them much in other places. They were just fun, and they actually add uniqueness to their own dungeons. They added fun and unique puzzles that you didn't really get to see in other Zelda games, and it just brought a new thing to the table. And hopefully we'll see more items like this in future Zeldas. It was very cool to see. Bombs. Who doesn't like bombs? We all like bombs, especially in Zelda games. It's how we find our secrets. It's how we fight tough enemies. And in Zelda Twilight Princess, this probably has the best use of bombs in any Zelda game to date. First, you can use the bomb arrow to use as a long-range projectile or blow away bombs, rocks from faraway places. Also, there's the water bomb, which added so much depth and way more interesting factors to the Zelda water dungeons. And always water dungeons were kind of frustrating, but the fact of water bombs actually made things interesting, especially to the lead up to the dungeon where you can use it underwater. It's how you get into it. And it was just such a cool thing to be added, and made even combat underwater more interesting, especially with how the iron boots worked underwater. Things were just greatly improved to make water mechanics, which were so poor on the Ocarina of Time and even slightly Majora's Mask gameplay, far more interesting in Twilight Princess. The next point I wanted to talk about is that the point of Overworld. Overworlds have always been a big thing in Zelda games. It's kind of the central point of where you kind of connect to all the other regions, how you get to Hyrule Castle or Carrico Village or the Zora's Domain. And it's always kind of been a standard. And in Ocarina of Time, it's always been one of the tiniest overworlds in comparison to most Zelda games. And it wasn't that impressive. Most of the interesting stuff was the unique zones or unique areas. And Epona never really had a use in such a small area. While in Twilight Princess, it's become dramatically bigger. And there's so many more unique and interesting zones connected to these areas. Of course, you can say, well, there's Lake Hylia and Gerudo Valley and Carrico Village and all that based in Ocarina of Time, but that is not exactly the overworld. Those are sub areas in Ocarina of Time, which Twilight Princess has too. It has its Hyrule Castle, it has its Gerudo Valley, it has its Dora's Domain, it has its Goron Village, it has all those things in a Carrico Village. But not only that, it has this large overworld where there's a ton of secrets and a ton of hidden areas, and just an abundant, bright, and beautiful world that is fun to travel through. It's fun to ride Epona through, and there's a lot of things you can do with Epona through it. It actually felt like Epona had a use, especially early on when I was traveling. Not only was there great teleportation in Twilight Princess, where they had very good and convenient spots to teleport to, so you never felt like it took too long to get anywhere, but it also just did a better job. While in Ocarina of Time, they had teleports only in the front of the temple. So sometimes you couldn't exactly get you where you wanted to, and it would just take a tedious amount of time to get somewhere. Of course, you would have to discover shortcuts, but those were always hard to find, especially when you were new to the game. Twilight Princess was easily accessible, especially to new players. It was a fun world to explore, and it was so much larger and so much more interesting than Ocarina of Time. Part 3 is a quick little one for me, and it's just Epona. I've already mentioned it, but Epona had so many improvements in this game. The combat was super fun, and it's super exciting in the game, where you're able to have sword fights with enemies, you're able to have crazy chase scenes, you were able to explore a massive world. Epona actually felt of somewhat use, and it felt like I was riding into battle with Epona. That never really happened in Ocarina of Time. Most of the time you were just chasing ghosts across the fields and seeing what it was like. And that was just really boring most of the time. And it was just kind of lame. In Twilight Princess, Epona was just awesome. It just felt cool riding. You could even trample enemies and run them over, and they would get knocked over. There was all these cool effects, and it just felt super rewarding to be riding Epona at all. And you kind of got that feeling right at the start of the game, at the very beginning of the game, and you play it. And since Epona had such a big part, and the mechanics just generally felt good on Epona, they even added as one of the final bosses where you ride off against Ganondorf. Just Epona was a great addition to Twilight Princess, and it's something that Ocarina of Time really was lacking in its fundamental concept. Combat in Twilight Princess is another feature that was greatly improved to really make the game better. If people haven't seen a video already, there is a video done by someone of the name Egoraptor on Sequelitis, and he does bring up a good point where a lot of times you're waiting in combat, and a lot of the fights feel generally the same. Well, Twilight Princess really adds on to that by actually improving the combat system. They actually, instead of trying to take away the combat system of Ocarina of Time with the Z trigger, they actually improved it. They added a lot more mechanics, such as the finishing blow, the shield bash, the helm splitter, and it actually kind of changed how combat was. And if you were actually skilled enough, you could defeat these opponents quickly, right? The ones that were generally blocking or trying to be careful. You could dash around them and hit them from behind. You could knock them down and then instantly finish them, right? So instead of having to wait all the time, you could actually be very aggressive, or you could do certain combos and defeat them. They actually have it as one of the main mini bosses where you fight against one of the enemy leaders in combat. You have to use these certain combos and abilities. Combat felt interesting, it felt fluid, it didn't feel bad, and you didn't feel like you were waiting all the time. You felt like you could go on there aggressive. You felt like I could be aggressive and do a certain attack. And it added very fun and cool mechanics throughout the game. So you could stun enemies, you could quickly finish enemies. It just generally changed the concept of combat, and they really use that. And actually the final boss, instead of where you're waiting around, running around and trying to solve a puzzle mechanic or use a special item to defeat the boss, the final boss where you face Ganondorf in a sword fight, you have to use all these different attacks and use them together and figure out a way to strategically defeat Ganondorf, right? And it was just cool that they did that. They actually improved the combat system so much that they built an actual boss fight around that concept. So kudos to Nintendo for actually improving the combat system where it was actually really faltering in Ocarina of Time. Moving on with our discussion, I really like the wolf. I do. Wolves are my favorite animals, so I'm slightly biased on this, I guess, but overall I felt like it did fit in the game pretty well as the secondary mechanic, as the Twilight world, the Dark Realm. The whole point of the wolf form felt pretty good. Of course, the scenting area was kind of tedious, but you could find hidden goodies, hidden areas, hidden dungeons. You could, of course, fight Pose with it. It felt like it actually brought a pretty fun addition to the game, and it felt like, oh, I can find new and unique secrets. I found a new heart piece based underground in this certain area. It didn't feel like the wolf form ever took away from the game. It only felt like it added to the game, right? It was the way it could kill a ton of enemies at the same time, or you could quickly dash around with Midna as your helper, where Midna is awesome. Generally, the wolf form just added to the game. It never took away, and it was pretty cool that they added that kind of concept of you being an animal overall into the game, where, as we remember in Link to the Past, when you turn into a little bunny, you're just walking around hopeless. While in this, you turn into a wolf, you got fangs, you got claws, man. You go out there and you go and kick some butt. One of the major points that I wanted to get to for Twilight Princess compared to Ocarina of Time is a lot of the mini bosses, well, most of the mini bosses, not all, are very unique to Twilight Princess. What I mean by that is a lot of the bosses, well, mini bosses, I'm sorry to say, for Ocarina of Time were kind of the same, right? You went against the wolf, you went against a Deku Scrub, you went against a Stalfos, you went against a Dark Nut, and only really the Dark Nut felt unique, but you constantly re-ran into these enemies consistently throughout the game. There wasn't really any uniquenesses to these mini bosses overall. While in Twilight Princess, some of these mini bosses were unique only to themselves. They were the only characters that had those abilities, and they had unique items that when you defeated them, you actually took the item from them. That's how you got some of your items. Or they had unique mechanics to them, especially like you could get an impression of this by the very first mini boss, the one from the Forest Temple, Ook, the monkey guy. He jumps around, he's leaping around on the top. It felt kind of like a boss. He's knocking down mobs from the top of the screen. You had to figure out a way to beat him, and just overall felt great. It just was awesome. It felt like every time I was going into a new dungeon, I was like, I'm gonna get a mini boss that I'm excited to go against because he's gonna be unique from a new enemy. He's gonna be a unique new enemy, and I'm not gonna really run into him again. It's gonna be like a boss experience, which a lot of the time it was. It felt like I was in a unique event. I was against a boss, and I had to use my wits or ways to defeat them just at that point in time. Mini bosses were just so superior compared to Ocarina of Time and a lot of other predecessing games. They did a great job, but of course they did have a couple of the ones that you see consistently. They did have the Dark Nut, they did have the flying Aerofalls guys that you would somewhat see quite a bit throughout the game, but those were only the real two criminals of that horrible Zelda sin, man. But overall, they nailed it with the Zelda mini bosses, and it was one of the best things they added to the game. They did an excellent job. Bosses in Twilight Princess felt a lot more epic comparatively to Ocarina of Time, especially when you go to the Lakebed Temple and you go against that giant Morphle creature that's swimming around. He's knocking over pillars, you're riding on top of him. Everything felt super epic throughout the game. These creatures were larger, they felt intimidating, and it also felt really rewarding defeating them. When you go against the giant spider boss in the Temple of Time, it just felt so cool doing that, and you felt like you were in a crazy event. It felt awesome, it felt cool, and Ocarina of Time had these bosses, but it never kind of reached that like amazing level of, man, I'm going against this giant creature. It's super intimidating. Sometimes in Ocarina of Time it would do that, especially when you went against, let's say, Bongo Bongo, and that was fun to face him on that drum set. But overall, like right away, you're absorbed very quickly into these boss fights in Twilight Princess, and you know that it's going to be a pretty fun boss fight. It's going to be pretty epic. So in this final part, I'm just going to kind of splurge a little bit of why I like Twilight Princess so much is, man, Midna. Midna is so awesome in this game. She's my favorite probably side character in any Zelda game to date. She's just super awesome. She feels like she's actually helping. She has a cool attitude. She looks cool, and she has like super powerful abilities. Like she blows up force fields. She has a giant hand. It's just very cool to see her interact with you as a character. And even she felt like she added more to the story comparatively to like Navi, or actually even any of the other side characters besides the King of Red Lions. The King of Red Lions and Midna felt like they actually added more to the story than really any other Zelda game to date. And Midna was not only the greatest thing about the game, probably is the greatest thing about the game in my opinion. She was just super fun to be around, but the world felt like it had crazy amounts of personality. You'd go around and everyone was fun to talk to. There was other people running around trying to help out throughout the world of Hyrule besides you. They were actually trying to actively do it. It wasn't like you're just a hero and you do it all by yourself. There's people there helping you, and there's people out there trying to face these enemies as well. Not only that, you go around and you're seeing just, there's so much personality and there's so much fun to the game. And say when you go into like Hyrule Town, the Hyrule Castle area, and you go down to the bar as a human, there's these guards, and they're like, yeah, we'll help you. And then the lady's like, there's monsters, and then they freak out. It's like right there, that's something that was just like really fun to see that you didn't really get to see in Ocarina of Time. Of course, there was like the fun personality characters everywhere, but man, like you go in to you see the Agatha doing her bug thing. There's the boy outside the window like spying on her because he likes her. There's all the kids from Carrico Village. There's Malo. He's gonna take over the world. It just like was brimming with so much personality. The NPCs felt so alive and so enjoyable to be around. Ocarina of Time, it kind of felt dead besides the sages. The sages were the only thing breathing life into the game. And of course, like there was Lon Lon Ranch, but everyone in Carrico Village was kind of the same. Even Gerudo Valley, all the Gerudos were generally the same. And same with the little Kokiris, like in their village. Just nothing felt awesome or had personality. Navi was just there. But like if you go into Twilight Princess, everyone was awesome. Everyone was cool. You're hanging out with the people and they're like, oh yeah, man, like we're here. And you run into town as a wolf. The guards are freaking out and you go, it's just awesome to see that interaction. And it's something that you just never got in Ocarina of Time. It's just something they added so much to. It's just beautiful to see. And it was a wonderful thing to have added to the game. And I wish that future Zelda games will do stuff like that. It felt like I had direct interaction with people in the game, even sometimes when I wasn't directly talking with them. It felt fun. It felt great. And I really do love Twilight Princess, even when it's not my favorite Zelda. It's not even my top 3, and I still love that game. It's an amazing game. Hey guys, been up a little while. Recording this video. I don't want to wake up my roommate, so I have to whisper. I just want to thank you guys for watching the video, and a lot of you guys who've been here for a while, or some of the people that have been watching the live stream and me playing Twilight Princess and even Ocarina of Time and other games. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I just wanted to give you some of my opinions or thoughts. This is not like a full-on review or blown out. This is just overnight editing and thoughts put together. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys ever want to see something like this again, or throw in suggestions, or even throw in your thoughts in the comments, I know a lot of people that like Ocarina of Time more. I really love that game too, but I just thought it would be fun to put my thoughts out there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I'll talk to you guys all soon.